Welcome to the News Channel 9 Town Hall. Talking about school vouchers, Tennessee has just made a big step in expanding their voucher program to the entire state. So we wanted to have this important discussion to talk about what this means for the students and parents of Tennessee.
This is brand new, and so we've gotten a lot of questions from both parents, schools, educators. So we want to try to get a panel of people who actually know this really well to try to answer some of those questions and really just clarify some of the details that may be a little bit murky at this point.
That's right. We're calling this our town hall, your voice, your future school choice. And if you live in Tennessee, if you live around Tennessee, you've heard a lot of this discussion already. But we wanted to bring in some of the people that were a part of that discussion as it went through the state House and Senate, and also somebody who works with public education every day to talk about how this could affect students. So, Josh, if you want to kind of go through all the people we have with us, and we will bring them into the discussion.
Absolutely. Let's start with State Senator Adam Lowe. He's a District 1, Bradley County, Meigs County, McMinn County, Ray County. He's a college professor when he's not doing all of that. So good to have you here, Senator. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. We got Kevin Raper, State Rep, District 24 out of Bradley County, retired educator as well. Glad to have him with us here today as well.
Thank you, and I'm very honored to be a part of it. And if you need me in the future, I'll be glad to be a part of those.
We appreciate that. We also have Justin Owen, the president and CEO of the Beacon Center, here to shed some light on some kind of deep dive research topics on this.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. We got J.C. Bowman, Executive Director, Professional Educators of Tennessee, also Marine Corps veteran. Semper Fi, sir.
Semper Fi. Thank you for having me, guys.
Yeah. So let's just start this off by kind of going around the horn here. We've got some state lawmakers and some folks who aren't, to kind of get some perspective of who supports this, who doesn't, why, some background on that. Let's start with you, Senator Lowe. I believe you voted for this. Explain why you voted for this legislation.
I did support the legislation. I actually ran as a school choice candidate when first elected to the Senate. As an academic, I have researched in that space for some time, written in the space. And as Tennessee started crafting their plan, anyone who followed the timeline knows that we started out in chambers in very, very different places. And the governor issued this general sentiment that he wanted to pass something related to school choice. Now, I'm one of those that says school choice encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses vouchers, it encompasses robust public education, charter school initiatives, homeschooling. I'm a big picture ed guy. And as we progressed into the special session, we really had an opportunity to learn from the mistakes of other states, to really focus in on a couple of key principles. Number one being, how do we let parents navigate the nuances of their child's educational journey? Can we create opportunities for that? Can we eliminate certain barriers around those opportunities, including wealth and geography? So as we began to ask those questions, the final crafting of the bill was something that I felt was a step in the right direction. I felt Tennessee's plan in learning from other states had the potential to lead in a lot of respects. And fundamentally, it goes back to two premises that I carry. One, I believe parents are the chief educator in a child's life. And most parents are responsible and capable of navigating those nuanced journeys. And two, I don't expect public education to be the solution for everything, even though we often dump a lot of stress on them. So that was my reason for supporting the legislation.
Thank you for that. Let's go to Representative Raper here. Obviously, the subject and topic of school choice can be broad. We're talking about a specific piece of legislation that affects Tennessee and how it's written. Explain to us why you voted against it there.
Real easy explanation. First of all, and I'm not disputing anything that Adam got because he represents our area, but he had talked about a majority of the citizens that contacted him being on board, and I respect that completely. I don't doubt him in the least, but mine was totally different. I mean, after talks again, because, and not to say there were several things I supported about the bill initially, but when I had such overwhelming majority of people that were against, it was a no-brainer at that point. I'm going to go and represent my constituents first. I serve them, and it doesn't really matter what I think at that point. I'm there to serve them, even if it's totally against what I think. And this wasn't totally against what I think. I had viewpoints on both sides of the coin there. So,
thank you, sir, for that. Let's go to Justin Owen. So the Beacon Center, just to clarify, a bit of a think tank. You work with policy, those kind of ideas. Tell us what your perspective is, I guess broadly, but also specifically on this bill.
Well, like Senator Lowe said, we believe at a fundamental level that parents are in the best decision to choose the education for their child. And that's going to include, for the vast majority of families, it's going to include public schools. We have consistently increased funding for public schools in our state, but that's just not the best environment for every family. We've talked to families that have 4 kids and they're all 4 in different environments because one learns well in their public school. Another needs to be homeschooled where it's a smaller hands-on one-on-one environment. Others do better in a charter school that's maybe tailored towards a special interest that they have in science or technology or in the arts or music. And then others even still want to go to a private school that follows their religious beliefs or focuses on something that they care more about. And so ultimately, we believe that parents should be in the driver's seat. And this is really the wave of the future. This is what's happening all across the country. We're the 13th state to pass universal school choice. This is nothing new. Many states have done this for years and years with a lot of success, not just for those that choose the private school option through an education savings account or a voucher or whatever type of structure they have in that state, but their public schools do better as a result of this as well. The vast majority of research shows that this is beneficial both for the families that need these options for their children and for the families that actually remain in public schools. It truly is a rising tide that lifts all boats.
All right, J.C. Bowman, if you could share your thoughts real quick here as well about what you've just heard and also your thoughts on kind of the whole process as well.
Well, I think number one, we all are in agreement on one thing. We do believe in choice. Everybody believes in some level of school choice. It is just where you get off the bus at on this or off the train. When it came to universal vouchers, I mean, we supported magnet schools, we support homeschool, we support charter schools, we supported every guy. We even supported vouchers in many instances where, for example, for low income and for other incidences where kids could do it. But universal vouchers are dollars that are going to kids who have never been in public school. And with that, we had some questions on that. And then starting in 25, 26, there'll be no income level on that. So dollars will go to private schools with no income level. So I think there has to be some restraints on there. We thought there was a lack of accountability in that. I think some other legislators have shared some and went ahead and voted for that. But I do think over time, you're going to see more accountability come into this system. And I think at the end of the day, I tell people we fought hard. Justin will tell you, we were there. We fought. We did a good battle. We're not suing in the state. I want to go on record and say we're not litigating this issue. We understand. We'll go work and make the best we can for all children in the state. We still think 90% of kids are in public school, and that's our focus. Most of our members are public school teachers. They see teaching as a calling. They're there to do their job, and I become their voice to speak for them and share these concerns. But we agree on a lot of things about this. But this particular thing, this universal voucher was going to kids that were never in public school. Even their own data showed that 66% of the kids have never been in public school.
And I do want to pause our discussion now. We're going to come back to some of those points because a lot of them hit some of the controversy on both sides. Yep. But let's go back to kind of the beginning of this process as the bill that became the voucher and what we could now call the scholarship program went into law, and look at a story back from when that passed. Lawmakers in the Tennessee General Assembly clashing over the statewide school voucher bill today, all before the House and Senate passed it. Thanks for joining us. I'm Latricia Thomas.
And I'm Josh Rowe. Democratic lawmakers trying to amend the bill several times. One of the main concerns, making sure the state does not waste taxpayer dollars.
Republican lawmakers maintain the voucher program can work. As one lawmaker put it, Tennessee can be one of the first states in the U.S. to fully fund its public school and a statewide voucher program.
Tennessee will be able to lead the nation in fully supporting and funding our public schools and providing choice options for those families that desire to go to a private school. There will be 20,000 scholarships, and that is all. And we will continue to spend the $7 billion annually that we spend on K through 12 public schools and then some. I look forward to the regular session where we continue to build upon the successes of the past so that every single kid in this state has an opportunity for a fantastic education and an amazing life.
Mr. Clerk, please take the vote. Ayes 54, 44 nays, one present not voting. House Bill 4 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. Most reads here table.
Now, the House passed the bill 53-45 with one lawmaker issuing a present vote. Then the Senate conformed with a vote of 20-13.
The News Channel 9's Mary Beth Mangrum has been tracking the key debates on the House floor today. She joined us now with an update. Mary Beth.
Josh, Latricia, both the House floor discussion and the Senate floor discussion heavily discussed if this program was right for students and if it would impact the public school system. Despite some concerns on both sides, the Education Freedom Act passed on the fourth day of this special session.
Ayes 54, 44 nays, one present not voting.
The Education Freedom Act of 2025, expanding vouchers across the state, is now headed to the governor's desk. For the House, Democratic representatives submitted several amendments.
What this amendment does is calls for an annual audit of the private schools.
But none passed. The only amendment to the bill is one added on Tuesday.
Relative to the teacher bonuses, the $2,000 one-time bonus that we're proposing for our 86,000 teachers across the state, it would clarify that those bonuses would be payable contingent upon LEA participation.
This amendment did continue to draw scrutiny from the other side of the aisle.
Our teachers make $3,523 a month. That is immoral.
But the change was defended by the bill sponsor.
We are asking the local school boards to pass a resolution that they will take $2,000, $198 million from the general fund at the state level, and they will pass that directly through as $2,000. No processing costs, no, diminishment at all. It's a $2,000 bonus that goes straight to our teachers.
And held plans of more money to come.
Our teachers have been busting their tail out there for our kids. They deserve a bonus and a raise.
House representatives in our area were split, with 5 voting against the act and 4 in support. For the Senate,
the pilot program that has been in Memphis, Nashville, Hamilton County, those students have not done better than their peers in traditional public schools. It's around 20 percentage points less.
There was also criticism on the program's effectiveness from some. But for other senators,
I want every family in Tennessee to have the choice that I had because of my affluence.
The element of school choice remained valued.
Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 20, nays 13.
House Bill 6004 having received a constitutional majority, I declare it passed.
Several of our local Republican lawmakers voted no, and we have that entire list on newschannel9.com.
So again, that story from when that first passed, and we did see several versions go through, and that at that point it had not made it to the governor's desk. Of course, now it has, and we're in the process of seeing it actually be implemented.
That's right. I think that there's a part of that wasn't clearly laid out there and through our whole setup, and that's where this money comes from. Obviously, if it's state money, it's allocated for something, right? So where does this money come from? Anybody who wants to answer that?
It's a separate pot of money that it's coming out of. And so that's where they're coming up with other dollars. At the end of the day, it all comes out of state coffers. So, my argument also was it created, and this was a debate that the Senate had last year. We actually agreed with John Lumberg on that, was that the pot of money coming out of creates a second system, which we found to be, you're going to do it funded out of the same pot. Subsequently, they did not do that for various reasons. I let Senator Lowe, since he's a senator, but that was one of the debates last year that held that up.
Well, I'll say, first of all, JC is a formidable opponent. We're good friends, and we shook hands after that vote. So even though we're on the opposite sides of this, we can respectfully disagree. You're in a no-win situation as a proponent of this when the opponents will say you're taking public money from public schools and directing it directly away from the public schools, which this bill did not do. Or when they will criticize it when you say we're going to refuse to do that and fund this separately. But at the end of the day, this isn't money that the government has that is giving it to anyone. This is taxpayer money. Every parent in this state is a taxpayer. They are paying for public education. They are paying for their kids' education. And all we're saying is that they deserve to take a portion of that funding. Here's a little over $7,000. And if they choose to utilize it for private school tuition to get their kids tutoring or educational therapy, they should be entitled to do so. And this bill, unlike former versions of the legislation that have been debated, will not lower education funding for our public schools. In fact, what we're going to see is what we've seen over the last several years under the leadership of Representative Raper, under the leadership of Senator Lowe and others and the governor, that have continued to invest more and more in public education along the way. So it is a really is a win-win solution for everybody in the state.
I would chime in a little bit on the funding piece. After we're done with the budget this year, in 6 years, we will be $2.5 billion to public education in the state of Tennessee. Teacher pay has gone from $35,000 a year in 2019 to $50,000 by 2026. There has been an aggressive, you cannot parallel that to any time in Tennessee history where the legislature and an administration has done more for public education. This side pot, based out of growth, because Tennessee's prosperous. Let's remind ourselves we're having a luxury discussion right here because our state has been economically prosperous under good conservative fiscal management policies in the state of Tennessee. And so we've got excess to work with, and we want to use it for the benefit of community. And so $144 million, 1.6% of the total education budget to serve 2% of the students. That's a cash positive arrangement. Any way you look at it, that's math. And with $2.5 billion to public education in 6 years, it was a little offensive to hear the notion that we were not doing for public education because it just simply wasn't true. It was such a spun narrative. And it felt, a little tricky when we were talking about how we were going to fund it because, as the Beacon Center noted, there was no winning situation. Everybody had criticisms one way or the other. But ultimately, I'm going to contend to this too. Anybody who's followed the current administration, not only was the $144 million just 1.6% of an $8.5 billion budget, we were working and navigating with what does the future look like under the Trump administration? Did we take the steps that the federal government wanted to see that might impact $1.6 billion in federal funds that come back to Tennessee in public education? So many of us were being cognizant of both levels, where it's coming from in the taxable realm and what's going to happen at the federal level. And I think you really saw that come together during special session when President Trump endorsed Tennessee's plan for school choice and made the announcement that block grants would be administered based on school choice. So we seem to have positioned ourselves very, very well to make sure we protect public funding and at the same time supplying some educational diversity for Tennesseans.
Representative Raper, would you like to chime in on this, or are you going to move on to the next topic?
Yes, I sure would. I want to say that many of the things that Senator Lowe is saying, I'm in agreement with. And number one, I'm a team player, and when something passes, whether I support it or not, I'm on board. I'm a team player, and I will exclusively support it. Next thing is this. From the beginning, one of my great concerns is that longer term, right now we're at 20,000 students. Does it go in the near future to 40,000? Does it go later to 60, 100,000? And I know that that's all futuristic, but I do not want it to impact our state budget where we're on the verge of bankruptcy or anything like that. My support throughout the whole thing of the bill was the fact of that as far as all this is, it's a support for students, and I love giving parents and students options. Period. I'm always supporting that, and even as a former educator, I think it's great. I'm not just locked in on public education, so I'm looking at all options. So I think that is wonderful. So anyway, I'll be brief, and that's my comments.
So let's take a moment to talk about some of the details that did work its way into the final version of this law and program. Right now, the proposed scholarship amount per student that participates is about $7,295. There are 20,000 total scholarships, as Representative Raper said. The first kind of bunch of those 10,000 are for families with an income that is below 3% of the limit to qualify for free or reduced lunch. So 300%. Thank you. So that first half is income based. The second half, though, the other 10,000 available regardless of income. And then when you start talking about some of the timing, applications are expected to be available this spring.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So the big news of the last week, and I believe we have a story on this, was you guys, the lawmakers, passed the legislation. And it's kind of one of those civics lessons ideas, right? Because that's not, the final, version of the rules and everything. And then the state board comes in and clarifies the rules. Before we get to the story, can someone kind of explain that process? Because I think that's one of those Schoolhouse Rock deals where, like, how does that work exactly? Can you explain some of that?
Well, I'll chime in because I just came off of the committee, Government Operations, that oversees rule promulgation in the state. It's actually something very special to Tennessee, and it helps us with governmental accountability. When we pass legislation, that communicates legislative intent, what the legislature intends to be done. We hand that to the appropriate departments to navigate a strategy to achieve those goals and that intent. But rather than just go into place like we see at the federal level and some other states do, we have elected oversight. All of those rules come back before members who are elected by the community to review them and make sure that they meet the intent of law. And that's the next step in this.
Gotcha. Do you want to play that story?
Yeah, we'll look at that now because I think, this happened just last week. And so a lot of the State Board of Ed, a lot of eyes there to kind of figure out how do families go about this and what are the specific rules of this. So let's take a look at how that just played out.
Schools in Tennessee are getting ready for the start of the state's upcoming school voucher program. Good evening, I'm Maggie Weaver.
And I'm Kim Chapman-Whitfield. Tennessee's Education Freedom Act was passed earlier this year and goes into effect next school year. Right now, though, we know that 18 schools in our area have signed up to be part of that program.
In Hamilton County, those include Chattanooga Christian School, the Montessori School, and Brainerd Baptist School, among others. There are also 3 schools in McMinn County and Faith Haven Christian Academy in Bradley County.
Today, News Channel 9's Meg Doyle talked to participating schools as well as opponents of this program.
An emergency meeting was called by the Tennessee State Education Board Thursday morning to vote on how to roll out the Education Freedom Scholarship Program.
Having the emergency rules in place throughout the spring and summer of 2025 will allow parents and schools time to make educational decisions prior to the 2025-26 school year.
However, the rush to start the program and lack of opportunity for public comment is causing concern for some representatives.
I just think when you rush through major programs like this that are going to cost Tennessee taxpayers over $1 billion a year in the coming years, I think the public deserves to have a say.
Chairman Clemens says by the time the formal rulemaking process comes around,
the train will have already left the station. Public input will be allowed under the law, but it'll be limited, and then they obviously don't intend to rely upon or give any good faith effort to comply with public opinion or input on this deal.
Belvoir Christian Academy is one Hamilton County private school that is participating in the EFS program. The principal, David Topp, says he thinks this will open up more doors for families.
It's just more of an opportunity for people to have a choice to get the best fit for their student, for their education. So once they leave the education system, they can be successful in.
Beacon Academy is another Hamilton County school taking part.
This is not to increase the students in our school. God's going to send the students to our school, whether they have ESA funding, EFS funding, vouchers, whatever. This is for families to have those opportunities.
Britt says they are already expecting 30 new students for the next school year, with at least half potentially being voucher students.
What we also understand is that current students attending our school could apply for those vouchers as well, so they don't have to previously have been in public school.
In Chattanooga, Meg Doyle, News Channel 9.
For a full list of schools participating in the EFS program, as well as the link to the full list of requirements to apply for the program, visit newschannel9.com.
So again, that was just spoken about recently when they started talking about how to implement this and what this is actually going to look like for families. We'll bring all of our guests back on now so we can discuss what we saw.
Sure. I think one part of that is the private schools who have not opted in yet still have time to opt in. But there are some people who seem to explain this as a loss for public schools and a win for private schools. But clearly we're seeing a lot of private schools haven't opted in at this point. So clearly not all those private schools feel like it's a big win for them. Can you guys speak to that as far as if you live in Chattanooga, obviously the bigger private schools, Baylor, McCallie, GPS, those schools are not participating. Any thoughts on that?
Well, that's the great thing about this program is that it's completely voluntary for both the public, the students, the parents who want to choose whether or not to participate, and the schools. We've got a really healthy number of schools. There are a little over 300 schools that are eligible under this. You essentially have to be an accredited private school in order to qualify for the program. Of those 300 or so, almost 200 to date have indicated an interest in participating. And going back to your questions about the rules in your news clip, this is a quick process because the goal is to serve families starting this fall. So this is going to be a little bit of a different year, trying to get this up and running quickly so that we can serve those initial 20,000 students. That's also something we learned from states like Arizona that went full bore, wide open, universal in year one. They had trouble processing all those applications and getting families into the program. We didn't want to have that same situation. So we wanted to serve those families well and then grow the program measurably over time based on demand by families to participate in the program. So even though there's already almost 200 schools signed up to participate, we expect there will be more in the future once they learn more about the program as well. And once it becomes fully operational after this fall.
One question about learning more is part of that for the private schools, right? They're independent. They don't have to report test results typically, but into this program, if they opt in, for the students that are part of the program, they have to report test results, achievement tests, TCAP or other tests that are nationally accredited.
They'll have to administer a national test.
Right. And so that's not been a requirement in the past. So just for those schools, what happens to that information that they submit that they in the past haven't had to submit? What happens with that?
Well, the goal is to have some data so that we can track the effectiveness of the program, which is very important, but also to protect those individual students. You don't want individual test scores being reported in a leaked or something like that for those kids. And so this is a good balance in that there is accountability, there's strong accountability, ensuring that they're testing and that those kids, we know how they're doing on the whole without compromising the individual results of those students.
And I do want to bring in right now, we do have from a preliminary report that they ran on the 3 counties across the state that already have a voucher program as kind of a pilot situation. Us here in Hamilton County, Shelby County, Memphis, and Davidson County. And they looked at some of the TCAP scores of the students that were still in public school and the students that chose, again, in those 3 counties to use the voucher pilot program and to go to a private school. And what you see here is a proficiency rate is lower for those ESA students that did choose to go to a private school. And there are a lot of factors in that. Sure. You know, it was a brand new program that year, as well as the governor even saying these are some of our, you know, most need-based students. And so any thoughts on that report that came out that showed some of those students didn't perform as well as their peers in public schools?
You hit the nail on the head there on that last point, because if you actually compare the results to low-income students that remain in the public schools, because all the students in the current program have to be below a certain income, then the students in the new program are actually performing better. But a lot of those families, the reason they're not performing well is because they left their school that wasn't serving them well and they weren't doing well to begin with. So they need to have time to catch back up.
Kevin Raper, as a retired educator, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, the testing part of that.
I definitely agree with the fact of there needs to be an accountability, which is in place. And I totally support that part, because I don't care what the school is, whether it's homeschool or whatever, there needs to be accountabilities. And really and truly, when I say that, it eventually comes back to testing, but also what we're offering, you know, such as, are we requiring benchmark assessments or so on? So yes, I'm totally supportive of the accountability portion of this.
We're past 30 minutes here, and we promised our guests we would only keep them for 30 minutes. We do want to show a couple more screens before we go quickly, because first of all, thank you for saying yes to this, because we asked a lot of people to join us who either didn't get back with us or declined for whatever reason. So we really want to appreciate, you know, you guys for sure. We asked. We have no representative from the public schools here. We asked Hamilton County, Marion County, McMinn, Bradley, Polk, and Cleveland all to join us. They chose not to. Also, the screen you're looking at now, those are all state lawmakers we also invited here. So thank you very much for being here, because these things help people understand what's going on, why this happened, what happens now. And I think it's very important for us to understand these moving forward. And you know, and then on top of that, you know, just being here and answering questions is important. So we appreciate that.
Yeah. And before we maybe get some final thoughts from you guys, I do want to say the governor was in town here in Chattanooga today. We know this was something that he has wanted to get done in the state for a long time. And we asked him about how the process is going to get that out to families and to get families on board.
Board of Education is moving forward with that rulemaking process. We feel confident that we will have the ability for families who want to access an education freedom scholarship, and for those schools who want to engage in that program, we'll be able to do it by this fall. You know, something Tennesseans have wanted. We have a great deal of effort was put into getting this legislation passed, but more importantly, to getting the freedom that for parents and the choices for parents for their children to have an education that they think is best for them. We finally have that in our state, so we're gonna bring about the rules, the process to make sure that kids can do it this fall.
So before we go, I want to give you guys a chance. If there's anything that wasn't said you want to say, feel free to chime in now.
Well, I'll add something to the test scores for ESAs. And this was a big part of the discussion around this. What do we measure success by? And a lot has been said about specific scores here. What we don't talk about is the reason parents choose educational alternatives, which is very related to social emotional wellness, fit, and we don't really measure whether or not a student has been more well-rounded by the move. Most reasonable parents would trade a couple of points on a TCAP for a well-rounded, healthy student who feels like they belong in the environment that they're in. And so we find that a lot of parents, a good measure is parent satisfaction. And when we go to other states, parent satisfaction is pretty high in participation. Even the states that have had budget problems, those budget problems have come by the popularity of the program, that budgets don't balloon unless families are lining up to use it. So at some point, we have to look at education from more than just kind of the academic element of what it does. Schools are a place where children learn to navigate socially, where they feel belonging. We're in a youth mental health crisis in our state, where kids are 3 times more anxious, suicidal, depressed than any generation before. And it almost stands on the merits to say, if we can empower parents to navigate a wellness strategy so their students can learn, let's figure out ways to do that.
Justin, JC, Kevin, anybody have any final thoughts you want to share?
I'll piggyback off something Senator Lowe said, and I absolutely agree. I am a outspoken person for the mental health. And by the way, it doesn't just affect our students; it's also affecting our teachers. And I think we need to recognize that. And so, and I'll commit to working with anybody to address that issue. But vouchers are not a magic bullet. They're not going to solve our woes. I looked at Florida data for a friend of mine just about a month ago. And I'll tell you, $3 billion later, they've added 2% to the private school sector. It will not kill public schools. And that's the one thing I want to say. The vouchers are going to do that. And it's not going to make a panacea. It's not going to change the world. We got to go back and make sure we're focused on 21st century skills. We've got to focus on problem solving, collaboration. Digital literacy is a big thing. And to Adam's point right here, emotional intelligence, mental health. We've got to make sure we're addressing all of those areas in whichever form of education that our children are getting.
Justin, I think we get you muted there.
Sorry about that. We can never stop prioritizing education. The future generations are going to lead America, and we've got to make sure that they're in the best place to do so. And we owe it to them to give them the best education they deserve. For the longest time, though, everything we've done, everything we've talked about has left one important group of people out, and that's the parents. And this is a huge step towards putting parents back in the driver's seat when it comes to their kids' education. And I really look forward to seeing what happens as a result.
State Rep Raper there, do you have any final thoughts?
Yes, just one or two. First of all, I love the aspect of the bill of school choice. I think that's wonderful. I just hope we have enough accountability in place where long term it will not impact the state budget, public schools, anything, So, but I do love the fact that we are empowering parents and students to virtually go anywhere they want to go and enjoy the process, and they're not forced to any category of, well, you're forced to attend public school and that's it, So I love that aspect, and so obviously I will continue to support it now. It's in place, and I'm happy about it.
Thank you for sharing that. Justin Owen, State Rep Kevin Raper, Senator Adam Lowe, and J.C. Bowman. Thanks for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, and there's so much more to follow as the rules continue to get ironed out. The State Board of Education setting up the framework. How do you apply? Who oversees the accountability, and how many more schools will jump on to participate? You can trust News Channel 9 to keep following all of those developments as they happen, because they affect you, your children, and everybody in our viewing area.
No question about that. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.